Alright, let's talk about some Pokemon. Much like a lot of people my age who have been playing video games, Pokemon came out when I was still in elementary, which is where I first fell in love with the series and have been playing the games ever since. So I thought it'd be fun to talk about some of my favorite Pokemon from each of the generations. Naturally, that takes us to the Kanto region, aka the first generation, the generation that got me into the series to begin with. Personally, I still quite like the Kanto region, with plenty of memorable locations like the Pokemon Tower and Abandoned Mansion, as well as having a pretty sizable amount of Pokemon to choose from. Now I do have one quick rule for this list, and that would be that I won't be including legendary Pokemon, since I never really use them. Though, if you are wondering, my favorite Kanto legendary Pokemon are Articuno and Mewtwo. Nor will I be including the Alolan forms, since I have no idea if Game Freak plans on keeping this type of concept, or how they will include it into future games, so yeah. Along with the Alolan forms, I won't be mentioning Mega Evolutions because honestly I don't know if we'll get more of those or not, and I don't want this to be too outdated. Keep in mind this is just a list of my personal favorite Pokemon of this generation, not the best, and trust me, I like a few non-competitive Pokemon. Plus, I'm not a super competitive player. I understand it for the most part, I'm just not personally good at it. Anywho, let's get things started. Okay, real quick here. Now, I have a very specific type that I really like, and the Kanto region has a lot of Pokemon from that type, but I didn't want my list to consist of just Water-type Pokemon, so I tried to add a few varieties here, and one of those was a Fire-type. Well, two, but I was debating between two to put at the bottom here, that being Rapidash and Charizard. And, well, between the two, I went with Charizard. Yes, Charizard is the Fire starter of the Kanto region, a dragon-looking Pokemon that isn't Dragon-type, unless, of course, you use the X-Mega Stone. I actually really like the look of Charizard. It's a simple but effective design that's pretty iconic. Charizard is also a pretty useful Pokemon in Leaf Green and Fire Red, since Charmander can now learn Metal Claw to beat Brock, and Charizard can now learn Fly, which is always great for easy travel across the region. Heck, Charizard is even used as a Pal Rider in Sun and Moon to fly you around the islands. It may not be huge on fire types, but Charizard for me is a really fun one, who's a pretty good special attacker with decent speed. Alright, up next we have Jolteon. Now, I'll be completely honest here, I'm not really that huge on electric types. In fact, electric and grass type are two of my least favorite types in the Pokemon series. It's not to say I hate electric types, but I just don't prefer to use them. Same thing goes with grass. But when it comes to the electric types of the Kanto region, I'm not really huge on a lot of them. I don't particularly like Raichu, I don't really like Electrode, and I'm not huge on Magneton. But Jolteon on the other hand, he's pretty cool. Jolteon is of course one of the evolutions, the electric one, duh. And he has the type of stats you would expect an electric type to have. Really good speed and pretty good special attack, and that's always really helpful. I don't use Jolteon all the time, but it's certainly what I prefer to have my Eevee evolve into when doing Nuzlocke in the games. Especially since you're constantly coming up against those damn Gyarados, and having an electric type is really helpful. Plus, like I said, Jolteon has that really good speed, meaning it can pretty much outspeed almost anything your opponent throws at you, with maybe the exception of something like an Electrode. Admittedly, its ability isn't all that impressive. I mean, it gets healed by electric type moves, and if you're gonna use electric type moves against electric type Pokemon, you probably don't know too much of what you're doing to begin with, or you just got a really shitty team. But Jolteon to me has a really cool design. It's really spiky, the yellow actually works for me, and I like the white collar it has. It's a cool looking Pokemon, and I really like it. Okay, so whenever it came to that fighting gym in the Kanto region where you had to choose between Hitmonlee or Hitmonchan, I always went with Hitmonlee. I don't really even know why, but I've always preferred Hitmonlee over Hitmonchan. Personally, I don't think either of them have all that amazing of design. In fact, Hitmonlee looks kinda weird, but they're also really charming to me for some reason. Now, I will admit, Hitmonchan definitely has the better moveset here thanks to all those different elemental punches, but Hitmonlee again just appeals to me so much more. Maybe it's just because he's more of a kicker. And kicking to me is always a bit more visually interesting than punches. I don't know why. Plus, Hitmonlee has at least gotten some improvements over the years. I mean, hey, at least he now can learn Blazikick, which gives him some variety, though I wouldn't mind if we got a few extra kicking moves that had some different type elements, like maybe some electric ones, or maybe something that's more along the lines of poison. That'd be cool. And then of course you have the number one move for Hitmonlee, High Jump Kick, which is pretty reckless, yeah, but hey, it's pretty awesome too. Again, I really don't have too much to say about this Pokemon. It's just for some reason one that I find to be really charming. I like the look of it, even if it's a bit odd, and I do enjoy the concept of a Pokemon that focuses on kicking for a fighting type. Okay, so remember I said I'm not huge on grass types? Well, here's one of my favorite grass types of the Kanto region, Executor. Now one way to make me really like a type I typically don't go for is by pairing up with another type to make it more interesting. And here we have the grass psychic type, Executor. I will admit I also do like Victory Bell, but Executor to me is just a bit more interesting. It's got a funny kind of design where it's this fat tree thing with legs and these coconut heads. I think it's supposed to be a palm tree, at least based upon how the Alolan region has its variant. But anyway, Psychic type is awesome. I have no idea why Executor is part Psychic type, but that's fine by me because Psychic type is my second favorite type. Executor really is great. It's got some pretty good special attack and special defense with some pretty decent moves to complement it. It's just a fun, cool looking Pokemon that I genuinely enjoy. So here's where we start hitting the Pokemon I have some true deep love for. And at number 11 we got Butterfree. I have no idea why, but I just love the butterfly Pokemon so much, and Butterfree is easily one of my favorites. Beedrill's cool, but I always preferred Caterpie over Weedle, mostly because of Butterfree. I like its design. It's a charming, cute one with these big bulgy eyes, its adorable little legs, and the wings. I like the patterns on those as well. It's also a good Pokemon to have towards the beginning of the game because, much like Beedrill, it evolves at a pretty early level 10 to be exact. And after evolving, it earns a pretty decent but weak Psychic type move, which was really helpful for me when I first was playing the Kanto games. I completely understand that Butterfree is not at all a competitive Pokemon, much like a lot of the early bug type Pokemon, and heck, even a lot of the early flying type Pokemon you can get most games. But Butterfree will always hold a special place in my heart, and it's in fact my favorite bug type from the Kanto region. Venomoth though, you're pretty cool too. In fact, I had a Butterfree on one of my first ever Nuzlocke of Pokemon Leaf Green that I named Mint, and it was really helpful for me early on thanks to all those damn Team Rocket members having poison types. Unfortunately though, I tried using Mint against Golbat and, well, that ended Mint's journey. Okay, so time for my favorite evolutions, and that of course being Vaporeon. Like I've mentioned, I really like water type, and I don't know why, but it's easily my favorite type in the series. And Vaporeon is a really good one in the Kanto region. In fact, there's a lot of good water types, but for right now we're just gonna focus on Vaporeon. Vaporeon, much like a lot of the other evolutions, tend to specialize in one stat, and for Vaporeon, that stat would be its hit point stat, as it's pretty damn high. It also has pretty good special attack and some decent special defense, so it's a really well-rounded Pokemon that can take a few good hits. Not only that, but it's got a pretty diverse move pool that can help you out in plenty of situations. Vaporeon is just awesome. I love the look of this Pokemon too. It's got a really great blue color scheme to it. The dark blue fins on its head look really awesome. I like the crest around its neck, and I absolutely love its tail. It's just a gorgeous looking Pokemon. It's always difficult for me to choose between Vaporeon and Espeon as my favorite of the evolutions, so the two are always butting heads, but Vaporeon is definitely one of the best in my opinion. And hey, look at that, another water type. This time, Poliwrath. Now I have a confession to make here. I love Poliwag. I have no idea why, but I love its design. I think it's super cute, and it's one of my all-time favorite water type Pokemon. And I think its whole line is pretty good too. Politoed probably being my least favorite of them, but Poliwrath is really cool. Water fighting is a type combination you don't really see too often. And of the few water fighting types, Poliwrath is definitely my favorite. I don't really like you much, Keldeo. I enjoy that he still has the large spiral on his belly, he looks tough, and he's got those big fists. He just looks really fun. Now, yeah, I do wish he still had that crown on his head that you can see in some of the early concept designs for him, which I think would help add to his personality a lot more. But Poliwrath is still really cool. It's a Pokemon I don't see people talking too much about, and there's probably good reason to that, considering that it has some, well, just all-around balanced stats. It's not anything that stands out too much in one area. The only stats that kinda just are its speed and special attack, which are just okay. But hey, at least he was used in the second generation for one of the gym leaders. Poliwrath is just awesome. He's got a pretty cool look, he's got some pretty decent moves, and he's just an all-around lovable Pokemon. Honestly, I think Poliwrath is a Pokemon that's definitely worth giving a try. Sandslash is awesome. Of the Kanto region ground types, you definitely have some interesting choices, from Marowak to Nidoking to Golem, but for some reason, I've always just loved Sandslash more. A lot of that has to do with its design, and if you haven't caught on to it by now, I tend to really like Pokemon that have designs that I find to be interesting, and Sandslash is of course one of them. I love its sleek armadillo look, with those razor sharp claws and those spines going down its back, and the ears for some reason just really complement the head real well to me. Sandslash certainly isn't isn't amazing in terms of its stats, they're just okay, and it primarily focuses on attack and defense with decent enough speed, but at the very least it gets a pretty decent amount of moves that it can learn to help give it some variety. And another reason I really love Sandslash is that my Sandslash and my first ever Leaf Green Nuzlocke named Saizo was super helpful for me and carried me throughout most of the game. To this day, Sandslash is still one of my favorite ground types, and is a Pokemon I always look forward to using anytime I replay the Kanto games or even the Hoenn ones. My favorite Kanto fire type, it's Ninetales. Now, yes, I know this isn't a very great Pokemon when it comes to competitive play, however, I still really love Ninetales. I mean, first off, its design is great. Its long, white flowing fur and graceful looking tails makes this fox have an essence of elegance to it. Oh, and don't forget that awesome looking shiny with gray fur and blue tipped tails. Sure, it sucks that Ninetales can't really learn any new moves after evolving, but with TMs like Flamethrower, Shadow Ball, and Will-O-Wisp certainly help make this Pokemon more useful on your journey. Personally, I always thought Ninetales should have been a Fire Psychic type due to how the Pokédex entries talk about it, but as just a Fire type, it's one of my favorites who specializes in speed and special defense. Anytime I play through Leaf Green, this is one Pokemon you can guarantee I will bring with me. Okay, so at number 6 we have a tie, and it's between two physical water types. First off, Kabutops, one of the two Kanto fossil Pokemon. Sure, Omastar is cool, but I've always loved Kabutops so much more. I mean, come on, it's a horseshoe crab looking creature with these badass sickle-like arms. It's awesome! Every time I've played through a Kanto game, I've always chose Kabuto. Kabutop's stats aren't too bad either, as it's a pretty decent Pokemon to have on your team with good attack and defense stats, making it really great against physical Pokemon. Not to mention it has a pretty decent move pool and okay speed. Then we have Gyarados. Yeah, leveling up a Magikarp is quite annoying due to how much experience points it takes, but holy crap, it is worth the trouble because Gyarados is a beast. I've always really liked Gyarados' large, scary, serpent-like dragonfish-looking design, but I never really used it in the first 3 generations since I didn't think it really was all that great back then. A part of that does have to do with how the physical and special attacks were set up in those games, but as soon as Generation 4 gave us that split, I began to appreciate Gyarados a whole lot then. Having such a great attack stat and being able to learn moves like Ice Fang, Crunch, and Aqua Tail makes it such a powerhouse to take out so many other Pokemon. Heck, Gyarados is so awesome it intimidates its opponents. Gyarados has easily become one of my favorite water types from Kanto, and a Pokemon I will gladly take with me in newer games. Plus, it doesn't hurt that a Gyarados helped me out big time in Pokemon Conquest, so yeah, even in spin-off games he's a badass. Gengar is such a cool Pokemon. Okay, so if we're strictly talking design, then I actually prefer Haunter more, as he can look both funny and charming, or scary and nightmare-inducing. But I still really enjoy Gengar. This is a Pokemon I haven't used too much, since you can only evolve it through trade, which is kind of annoying. This Pokemon of the Shadows still has a fun design itself though, mostly in its face with that big smile. It makes it look like Gengar enjoys doing evil things. Ghost type was a type I always wanted to love, but never really used too often. Thankfully though, the type has improved over the years, getting more and more useful moves. What makes Gengar so great is its high special attack and speed, so giving it moves like Shadow Ball, Sludge Bomb, and Dark Pulse can be pretty helpful. The only complaint that I really have is that as of the 7th generation, it no longer has its Levitate ability, which really sucks since that helped remove one of its weaknesses and made it more useful. Maybe one day we'll get it back, but at the very least, I still love the Shadow Pokemon. Much like Gengar, I never really got the chance to use Alakazam too often due to trade evolution. But when I have, yeah, I love it. Psychic-type Pokemon have always appealed to me, which might have something to do with them being really useful, especially in the older games, and Sabrina being one of my favorite gym leaders. I don't know why, but I find there to be something mystical and cool about the design to Alakazam. I just really enjoy his weird little mustache, the strange shape of his head, the weird parts on his body, and I enjoy that he carries these 2 spoons. He just looks so neat, and it really makes it worthwhile catching an Abra, those damn teleporting fuckers. Alakazam has some pretty great special attack and speed with okay special defenses. And man, that nice move pool certainly helps out as well with moves like Psychic, Energy Ball, and Shadow Ball. Sure, when it comes to physical attacks, Alakazam is pretty damn fragile, but that still doesn't stop it from being one of my favorite Psychic types in the series, and a classic one at that. For me personally, Misty was the first gym leader to stand out to me, half of that having to do with her gym taking place in a pool, and the other half being her battle, which to me as a kid was more interesting and harder than Brock's. And the Pokemon on her team that stood out the most was Starmie. Starmie is pretty damn amazing. After all, it is part Psychic type. First off, I really like the look of this Pokemon, as it's a large purple stone looking sea star creature with a very royal looking red gem at its center. Plus, its shiny is pretty neat too. I've been using Starmie more often recently since I needed something to help me out in one of my Nuzlockes, and holy shit, I had no idea how useful this Pokemon can be. Starmie has amazing speed and special attack that is very much complemented with one of the greatest move pools ever. Starmie can be useful in so many ways. It can learn Rapid Spin to get rid of moves like Toxic Spikes, it can learn Ice Beam, Psychic, Scald, and Recover, giving it plenty of coverage and an absolute asset to have on your team. Now why don't we talk about my favorite Kanto starter? Sorry Venusaur, but Blastoise will always be the best starter of the region for me. Squirtle was my first ever starter, so yeah, it's pretty easy to see why I have a preference for this Pokemon. It starts off so cute, and eventually becomes this really cool looking turtle with cannons coming out of its shell. That's great! To me, Blastoise is one of the best starters anyone could choose, since it has such balanced stats. Sure, it focuses more on its defenses and has a lesser speed, but its physical and special attack are certainly more evened out. So if you want a more physical Blastoise with moves like Skull Bash, Earthquake, and Aqua Tail, you can. Or a special attacker with Scald, Ice Beam, and Flash Cannon. Heck, you can have a mixture of both. Every time I've chosen Blastoise, it's been very useful for me and the foundation to my team. For me, Blastoise will always be one of my favorite Kanto Pokemon and one of my favorite starters in the series. On to number 1. Now, my favorite 3 types are Ghost, Psychic, and of course, Water. So, yeah, my favorite Kanto Pokemon is a Water type, and not just any Water type, but one of the most iconic, Lapras. I fell in love with this Pokemon the moment I first saw it. Lapras has such a great design, and it's even somewhat based off of the Loch Ness Monster. It looks like that of a Plesiosaur with its long, elegant neck, its charming eater swirl things, cool armored shell, and a great choice of blue for its body. I understand that Lapras isn't the greatest competitively, after all it is part Ice type and it has low speed with only okay abilities. For me though, it's always been a useful Pokemon since it has good defensive stats and pretty decent offensive stats as well, all being complemented with its amazing hit points. Personally, I prefer my Lapras as a special attacker, since it can learn Ice Beam, Scald, Thunderbolt, and Psychic, making it a really great Pokemon to have on my playthroughs. Lapras is just a Pokemon I really love, and I think Game Freak love it too, since it's been used as the Surfing Sprite in Gold and Silver, given its own Surfing Sprite in X and Y, and was even made as a Pal Rider in Sun and Moon. Whenever I think of Kanto, I think of Lapras, who will always be one of my personal favorites in the series. Well, I hope you enjoyed seeing which Pokemon I really like from the Kanto region, and I apologize if this list in terms of its scripting was a bit haphazard. I was reading off the script during most of it, but there was also moments where I was just kind of going off on my head, so I apologize again for if it just felt a bit unorganized. I'll definitely try better next time when I get to the Johto region, which I hopefully will do before the end of the year, but I don't have any plans of doing that anytime soon. In the meantime, why don't you go ahead and share your favorite Pokemon from the Kanto region in the comment section down below. I'm MCB the PS2 Gamer, and I'll see you all next time.